If you're caring for a person with dementia, have you ever experienced them being angry or repetitive, frustrated? I want to say, first of all, as a caregiver, it's not your fault, and many caregivers find themselves in this position. And today's video, I wanted to share with you just all the different behaviors that, as caregiver, you may experience while you're caring for your loved one, and just give you a little bit more of an insight as to why they might be happening and give you a better perspective of how do you approach this and how do you, frankly, keep your sanity as you're dealing with some of these things. So welcome to inHom Senior Care. My name is Vitali, and I wanted to just dive into this topic today and be able to share it with you. So please stick with me to the end as I get through this and really help you to understand better how to deal with this. We've been doing home care for seniors for over 20 years, and dementia, and including Alzheimer's, is one of the specialties that we have that we're able to train our caregivers with. And so part of what we do with this channel on YouTube is to be able to just give some practical advice to family caregivers and hopefully help you on your journey as you do this. So again, welcome here, and let's dive into the topic. So sometimes we call these behaviors challenging, difficult, right? And so I want to reframe that just a little bit, because as a caregiver, it's part of your role, our role, to adjust to the person with dementia. The reason being is because whatever they're expressing, even though when it comes into the area of behaviors, we always see it like they're things that we need to kind of monitor, maybe control to a degree. And so it feels like something that they're doing, right? And it is something they're doing, but again, I like to bring up the comparison between Parkinson's and a person having tremors. We wouldn't try to ask them to control their tremors because we know it's part of their disease. So in dementia, part of the disease is sort of the dysfunction of the brain, that it's causing them to do things that when they didn't have the disease, they wouldn't have done those things, right? That's we liked, we loved, and we still love the person we care for, but now these behaviors may be causing a bit of frustration. And so the reframe is that as a caregiver, you will have to adjust to a new normal as these conditions kind of persist and they change over time. And again, remember that these are symptoms of a disease and not the person purposely being difficult or trying to make your life hard in some way. Okay. So just to understand, what is dementia? Dementia is a disease that affects the memory process. It affects cognitive thinking and the ability to draw on long-term memory and draw on experiences and to put things together to come up with a decision, as well as like slowly losing the ability to just do daily functions and daily tasks. So things that are affected are memory, reasoning, emotional regulation, and then even an ability to filter stress and fear and anxiety properly. And most of us deal with those things when our mind is working correctly, but we may wrestle with, man, I feel fearful about this, but I know it's okay, or I feel anxiety about something, but I know that I'll be okay. Well, you combine that with someone who their mind is not functioning properly, and they can't regulate that. They can't really think about that. So think about that the brain physically changes when we look at when they do. When they can look at an autopsy of a person who had Alzheimer's, for example, and they kind of do like a slice of a brain, that brain is very different from a person who was healthy, maybe let's say same age, same sex. That brain is very different. That brain is deteriorated, so that the mass of the brain doesn't weigh the same amount, there's less of it. And so it's a physical, like sometimes we think of it as almost more of a mental issue. It isn't. It's actually a physical affliction of the brain that causes problems with the normal things that the brain does, which is reasoning, which is being able to process information and draw on old memories and experiences, combine those and know that, like, do I want to do this? No, I don't like that. I don't like this. Those things kind of go away and they can't do that. So that's why logic and reasoning may not work anymore. And here's kind of a big statement that, just to help sink that in for you, is that you cannot reason someone out of a brain injury. Okay, so think about that. You can't reason with somebody whose mind is deteriorated to where they can't really accept your reasonable argument and process it and come back with a rebuttal, right? So just think about that. So I'm going to go through the actual different, what we would call behaviors, kind of quick, and then get in a little bit. So this video, we're not really going to get into solutions or techniques to help you manage. This is just going to be what they are. And I would love comments. Share with me what you've experienced with your loved one, what kind of behaviors you've experienced, and maybe I always learn new things. So I love hearing from caregivers who will tell me, like, oh man, I had this issue and this is what I do and it works really good. Or I tried this and it was really frustrating. I'd love to hear that, because that cumulative knowledge really helps. And hopefully even in the comments of this video, we might be able to help one another to be able to just process that information that's helpful. So number one is agitation and anger, right? So like where whatever that may be, maybe you're asking them to do something and they respond with anger, or they're annoyed, they're agitated, and it could be like, oh my goodness, like what's happening here, right? So why does that happen? Well, it could be a number of things, but fear could be the issue. So whatever you're proposing or whatever is at hand, maybe they may be fearful about it. It could be overstimulation. So you think of Christmas, think of being together with a great big gathering of people, and you thought it was a fantastic idea to have mom or grandma there because look at, there's everybody's there. It's so amazing, right? Well, it is, but it could also be like way too much, right? Too much noise, too much stimulation, and so it may even be too much for some of us that might be a little bit more introverted, and that's like, whoa, I can handle that for a little bit, but not for a long time. But then throw into the mix a brain that can't process all this stuff very well, and so that could easily cause someone to be in that agitated state to where they don't know what's going on, but they're not happy about it. They're not having it. Feeling rushed or controlled. So a lot of times we want to talk about tone of voice because that comes through clearer than the actual words. They will not hear the words necessarily or not fully understand them, but the tone will set them on edge because it sounds like somebody's commanding them or somebody is telling them what to do. And none of us really like to be told what to do. So as a caregiver, it's going to be part of our job is to manage that tone and how we communicate. But feeling rushed, again, same thing, all of us, none of us like to feel rushed where somebody's, telling us, we got to go, we got to do this. So keep that in mind. Sometimes the triggers are going to be things like bathing or dressing, maybe things that would not be perceived as pleasant things, right? Don't know why. Bathing tends to be a challenge. In some ways, it may be a reverting to the younger self, like as a child, maybe a person did not love, taking a bath, or maybe the process of getting undressed and all those things may feel overwhelming, may feel too much. So dressing or transitions, in other words, going from one thing going to do something else, or may cause that struggle and that frustration. So number two, resistance to care. right? So again, we kind of mentioned bathing, but it could be bathing, it could be, asking somebody to change their clothes or to put on new clothes. And again, a lot of times the trigger or the issue is not that task, but it's the nuance around that task. Because you could say, hey, you need to put on a new shirt because that one's dirty, right? And that's a lot of information for somebody with dementia. And so, when we'll do another video, and I might actually tackle like one technique at a time just to be more precise and to be able to spend more time on it. But so a lot of times it's that a lot of the nuance into what's actually happening, because sometimes we're presenting way too much information. Taking medication could be another one, or eating a meal where you get refusal. So, and then why does that happen? Well, a lot of times it's the tone. Again, it's like if we come across as commanding and telling someone what to do, that instantly, and most of us react this way. We don't want to be told what to do. We want to be invited into situation, invited or ask permission if we want something, but we don't want to be told what to do. And so if you're doing that, that will instantly kind of put up a barrier for someone with dementia. And then sometimes, like I said, it's reverting kind of more to like a childlike state, to where just certain things are not perceived as pleasurable. And so, how do you handle that? How do you overcome that? And then sometimes just pure confusion about what's being asked, because maybe you're using too many words and you need to do things in a way that is clearer to them. Number 3 is repetition. So repeating questions. It's a very, very common thing, right? So, whatever it may be, like when are we going to eat, or when are we going to bed, or when are we going home? It could be all sorts of things. Whether it's questions or just repeating a story about something, and a lot of times it isn't relevant to the time today. So it may be something that actually may be real if you go back 5 years ago, and that's one of those things that with dementia they tend to retain long-term memories from a while ago. A lot of those memories are actually very solid and they make more sense. Anything new, because remember with dementia, the learning of new information really kind of goes away. And so the short-term memory doesn't function. And so anything that's new is just super confusing, right? So why does it happen? Well, of course, because as I just said, short-term memory loss. Sometimes it's seeking reassurance, but more than anything, it's they literally don't remember that they just asked you, right? It will feel silly to you, maybe frustrating to you, because like, I just told you this. I just explained it to you, right? And that question comes up. Again, they aren't being difficult. They literally don't remember. They don't remember they asked you. They don't remember you told them, right? It just, so they could be asking because they're anxious and they're like, or maybe they're hungry and they're asking about lunch multiple times. But more than likely, it's because they forgot you answered, and in fact, they forgot they even asked, right? So it's usually simpler than you think, but that's why it's happening. So shadowing is kind of in the same category as repetitive questions, but it's literally where the care receiver, the person with dementia, is actually just going to follow the caregiver around the home, almost like a little puppy will, right? Like, and I've had usually it's a spouse, right, where they're a little frustrated because they feel like they can't get a moment alone because the person's just kind of constantly there. And so, like, why does that happen? So it's complex, right? It's hard to say why it's exactly happening, but it's fear, it's anxiety, it's confusion. Like, I think dementia is a very hard thing to imagine, because anybody that has dementia can't really explain it to you. They can't explain their emotions, right? It's just all confusing. It's all just sort of, swimming and swarming, and nothing makes sense. So they're looking for safety. They're looking for comfort, for familiarity. Really, like, here's the best way I can actually say this, is that you're the only thing in their world that makes sense, right? So everything is confusing. They know who you are, they recognize you, and they're trying to latch on to the only thing that actually makes some sense, and the only thing that that offers to be a source of stability for them, right? Again, they would never be able to tell you this because logically they could never communicate that. Another symptom or another behavior, we would call it, is suspicion, paranoia, and accusations, right? It's like, I remember, years ago when my grandma was alive, she would always think that somebody was out to get her, somebody was taking things were disappearing, right? And a lot of times the person with dementia, because of this kind of paranoia, they'll actually hide things. So they'll actually take things that they are nervous about somebody taking, and they're going to put them into a drawer. They're going to put them, underneath things. And then, of course, they don't remember what they did or where they did it. And so they go looking for the thing that they are worried somebody's going to take, and they can't find it. And of course, they may accuse someone of taking their things. So it's a very common thing with dementia that happens. So why it happens, it's all the different reasons, right? Because they forget, and because their world is so confusing with everything going on, it's hard to trust anything or anybody. And I think that's just kind of part of that. So they may accuse someone of stealing their purse, saying, "You're lying to me," just a general state of paranoia. And it's very, very hard on caregivers, on loved ones, right? Because it can feel very accusatory. Well, it is accusatory, but it can feel like you're under attack, and this person who you love and who is supposed to love you is treating you with suspicion. So it can really be hurtful for the family caregiver. But again, I bring you back to the idea that, remember, this isn't them. This is a symptom of a disease that they have. And so we have to rise above it and not engage with them as to what they're saying, but deal with the issue and the fact that they need to be cared for, and they need to be loved, and they need to be, protected and provided safety. So another one is sundowning, and that's increased confusion or agitation in the late afternoon or evening. So it's, again, a very common symptom, a very common behavior that you'll see for someone with dementia. And multiple things. It could be fatigue, but obviously the sun. I mean, it's even weird, I think for someone that doesn't have any of this, but like in the winter with the low light and very little light, we can all feel a little weird and a little sad and a little out of sorts. And I think it's because of the added confusion to where you can't go, well, yeah, it's weird because I leave when it's dark and I come home when it's dark. I mean, they're not going, they're not leaving. I get that, but I'm saying it's the whole idea of that just messes with the brain, because your logical brain can't step in and say, hey, it's okay. The days are going to get longer, things are going to be more normal. And so lots of these things kind of play into that with the disrupted circadian rhythm and all those things. And so that's why the evenings sometimes are the most difficult and where the behaviors can manifest more, because they're just agitated, because they don't feel good. Like emotionally, they feel like something's wrong and they're trying to figure things out. Sometimes it's even tied to something like, so let's say it was, a mom who for a chunk of her life took care of kids and would maybe meet kids coming off the school bus in the afternoon. Some of those repetitive repetitive behaviors that a person did for such a long time are so imprinted in them that there's like a trigger where I need to go, I need to do something, but they have no idea what they need to do. And it may be tied to something that they've done, almost like a maternal instinct to something they were doing to take care of their kids. That is now, they don't need to do that, because obviously for a number of years and for a chunk of their life, they haven't done it because the kids were older and weren't coming off the school bus. But that is still sort of revisiting them in a sense that they feel this compulsion, but they can't really voice or say why they're doing that. So that's why it's important to be able to help them feel safe and know that they're okay and that nothing is wrong. Because like when you think about when somebody's in their right frame of mind, they would say, I just had this feeling. I just felt I needed to do something, right? It's almost like an intuition. which is like an emotional response to something. But our brain can kind of go, okay, it was about this, and I was worried about that, and that's why I was doing that. Well, with dementia, they can't do that. They can't explain that to you. Another inappropriate behavior is inappropriate behavior in and of itself, as we talk about that. So we can talk about like sexual comments, or another, just maybe vulgar conversation. So maybe it's someone who, like, you would never hear them utter a swear word, and all of a sudden stuff is coming out of their mouth, and you're like, what is this, right? Or maybe they're being sexually inappropriate in some other way. And so I find, family members really, really struggle with this, because they feel like, oh my goodness, it's so embarrassing, right? It's my dad who, like, has been this rock in my life, and he's like saying these weird things, or he tried to do something to a caregiver. So again, rise above and understand that this isn't the person doing that. This is a disease process and a symptom of that. So with dementia, you lose the ability to self-monitor, because remember, appropriate behavior is learned, right? It isn't innate to us. We aren't born understanding what proper behavior is. We are taught. Our parents, as well as the society, teaches us that this is okay and this is not. You are not to do these things, right? And sexual inappropriateness falls into that category. And so you lose the ability to self-monitor, to be able to go, am I acting appropriately? Am I doing things that are okay in whatever setting that may be? And then loss of the ability to manage that learned appropriate behavior, right? So whatever I learned and know that this is okay to do and this is not okay to do, that that information is not accessed by the brain very easily. And then a loss of inhibitions is kind of another that contributes to this whole thing. So it's all part of these issues. So hopefully I've covered stuff in here. Again, I'd love to hear more from you as a caregiver, what things you've had to deal with and how you've maybe overcome them. But couple of things just to leave with you before I'm done with this video is focus on emotion and not facts. Get away from trying to correct the person and restate the truth as of today and saying, hey, it's not, whatever you're saying is not accurate, right? We're not trying to be right. We are trying to make him feel safe and cared for. So validate before redirecting, and meaning, I understand what you're asking, or you're okay, you're safe, right? Your tone of voice is going to be your most important care tool, because your voice needs to be calm and reassuring, and certainly not elevated, and certainly not accusatory, not commanding, those types of things. So slow down your pace and your tone. Here's something to remember. Choose connection over correction, right? It's just sometimes these things are nice to be able to kind of remember that. So your connection and the emotional aspect is more important than the correction to the accuracy of whatever, right? So if they said something incorrectly, or they told a story from 5 years ago and they're acting as if it happened today, correcting them is not going to accomplish anything. And choose that connection and maybe dwell with them in that story and just enjoy that moment versus correcting them. And then pick your battles, right? Like when we talk about, having the person take their medication, yeah, that's a pretty important one. So for us to figure out, how do we win that to make sure that we don't, well, first of all, how do we not turn it into a battle, right? But how do we make sure we succeed so they take their medications, or eating a meal, or taking a bath. And then certain other things, they're just not that important. Even a bath, like if we're doing a bath once a week, like if today's just not a good day, let's look at it and let's try tomorrow. I mean, you could still try later today, right? But you could also try tomorrow. Simple phrases that are really powerful is, you're safe. I'm here with you, right? You're okay. Let's do this together, right? Invitation versus a commandment or a commanding phrase to tell them to do something. So keep in mind, as a caregiver, think about that. A lot of caregivers carry a lot of guilt. They feel bad. They feel like maybe I'm doing stuff. I'm causing this person. The fact that you're caring for them and you're there and you're dealing with all these things, kudos to you. And it's amazing. And someday down the road, you will look back at this as a time that's actually really will be a very rewarding and a powerful time in your life that you very deep and rich, right? But we do want to help caregivers to do that as good as they can. And as a caregiver, you will have to learn techniques. You will have to get better at being able to do that. So you're not causing any of this. You are responding to symptoms, right? Symptoms of a disease. And keep that in mind. It's not them doing these things or acting in these ways. It is a disease process that they can't control. And so we have to figure out how to be loving and caring to them. So thank you for your time. Please share this video with your friends or those that you know that are in this window of care where they're providing care to a loved one with dementia. And then comment. We really want to hear from you. And like and subscribe. Thank you. We'll see you in the next one.